Oh, yay! Oh, good. My Screencastify is working. Okay. So, welcome to class today, guys. This up until the end of the book, end of the year, we're going to be reading this book. It's called Shabanu. That's how we pronounce that. Shabanu, Daughter of the Wind. All right, and it's written by Suzanne Fisher Staples. Now, with this, it is. Why is my screen say 1? Like the Screencastify is paused. I don't even know. I'm hoping it's still working. Otherwise, I'll just record it later. What can I say? So anyways, this is our book that we are completely going, and I'm going to pin myself. Sorry, Miss Williams. That way people can kind of see this on the screen. Pin. Oh, come on. Oh, there I go. I do have a number 1 in front of me though. All right. So anyways, this is our book, Shabanu, and it is about a girl growing up in Pakistan, in the Kholistan Desert. Today's assignment that you guys will see on the Google Classroom has a before you read activity. Normally in class, what we would end up doing is doing some activities to lead up and kind of get us familiarized with the characters of the book a little bit, where they grew up, their culture, that kind of thing. So, one of the first activities that you had to do is talk about a loss that you've experienced, maybe with a pet or something else along those lines. That way, and it kind of sets the stage for the book in which they're going to talk about. You'll know, obviously, if you're being asked about a loss in your life, that Shabanu's going to experience a loss in her life. So it does talk about that at the very beginning. So it kind of lets you know, it kind of not only lets you know, but kind of gets you into understanding her thoughts, her feelings, kind of relating to Shabanu. Okay. The next thing that it talks about is it actually goes through and talks about what type of people they are. Now, I'm going to ask a question and I'd love you guys to post some things in the comments. So, my first question for sure is, what is a nomad? Because Shabanu is a nomad. Her family are nomads. What does that mean to be a nomad? And again, we're going to post those in our comments. A nomad.
So Chase says a nomad is someone who travels around a lot.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, they don't have any set home, right? So with that, I'm trying to actually show the questions on my board as well. So a nomad absolutely is somebody who does travel around and doesn't have a home of their own, which is unfortunate. But when we say they don't have a home of their own, it's more like property of their own. They live in housing that can be taken down and then put back up somewhere else. So equivalent to this is something that you guys might understand is more like a tent. Now, they do not live in tents, excuse me, but they do have these homes that they kind of take down and put up, these shelters. And with this, Shabanu's dad, his job is to kind of raise these camels and sell them. So this is kind of how he makes a living. Now, one of the problems living in a desert is that there may not be enough water. All right, but we talked about the way in which water gets brought into this area before spring, like last week before spring break. Do you remember what kind of storm would come and bring a lot of water into these areas? Do you remember at all? Does anybody remember? It has a certain name and it's a type of storm.
Chase says monsoon.
Very good, a monsoon. Right? So these monsoons come in and it drops some rain and allows them to kind of stay in the desert, in the Kholistan Desert. But you have to understand that Shabanu's family is very different than what our families are like. And by that, I mean the culture is different. Okay. We have homes that are very stable. We stay in them in the same area for 12 months out of the year. But Shabanu's family isn't like that. They move around. In Pakistan, their culture is very different with the expectations that they have for their daughters and the expectations that they have for their sons. It is still very much different, and um, sons and daughters are treated differently. Why do you think sons and daughters would be treated differently? Kind of think back in history with what you know about maybe how girls and boys were treated in the, say, late 1800s, early 1900s. What's the difference between girls and boys and how they would be raised or how they would be treated? Maybe even the jobs that they would have. What do you think that's going to look like? I'm sure somebody knows the answer.
Men are higher paid from Kendra.
Okay.
Mariana says some people think girls and boys should only do certain jobs.
You're right. And they actually still believe this in many parts of this country, in Pakistan, still today. This story is about 15, 20 years old now, just to give you a grand scheme of things. So this was written in like the early 2000s. But with that, the culture hasn't changed that quickly. Like, it's not like in a matter of like 15 to 18 years, all of a sudden the culture has been like, bam, we're going to change. All of a sudden, we're going to allow girls to do everything that boys do. These changes in culture take a really long period of time, just like here in America. How long it took for women to get the right to vote, for women to own property, and all of these different kinds of things. All right. And you're going to see these differences. And some of these differences are going to be shocking to you. You're going to be like, wait, what? They do what? And that's okay, because that's part of our class. We're learning about cultures and the differences. Now, the next thing, we studied religion in this class already. That was part of our previous studies, and they're going to talk a little bit about that. These people living in the desert, her family, are Islamic. Okay, so you have a little bit of background about that already. They believe in Muhammad, that he is the prophet. They believe in God, but what they do and what they wear and some of their beliefs come forth in this book, just so you can kind of expect that and understand that. About there there are some also different beliefs as far as marriage, that this book is going to talk a little bit about. And this book actually has some very adult topics. So I do ask for your maturity when listening to these books. You have to understand that they talk about murder, and they talk about marriage and weddings and puberty, the development of women through puberty, those kind of things. So I just want you to be aware of that as it goes through the book, because these are usually things that I can prepare you for chapter by chapter. But I'm also aware that some kids are going to search out these YouTube videos and try to listen ahead at certain points in times. Therefore, I wouldn't be able to prep you on it. So you need to know that there are some adult topics that do come up in this book as well. Something else that's in this book is figurative language. All right. So when they talk about figurative language, they use a lot of things to describe. They'll say things like, I'm going to pull an example from my book here, and you guys also have this, I think, in your lesson. It just kind of mentions it. But a simile is a figure of speech in which a comparison of two unlike things are introduced as like or as. And I would bet, Miss Williams, maybe you can chime in on this. Have they covered this in their English classes? Do we know? I think they have. Seventh grader.
I think that they have, but only if they have Miss Wilcox for literature.
Okay, so I'll explain it a little bit. So with this, they're going to hear things like tough as a rhinoceros hide, What's a rhinoceros hide? What is that? I mean, is it like the rhinoceros is going behind a bush and hiding? Is that what they mean by rhinoceros hide? What do you think that means? Tough as a rhinoceros hide.
Mark says their skin.
Yeah, they're right. Their skin. It's as tough as a rhinoceros skin. So she's going to take something and maybe compare it to rhinoceros skin. Like her, I don't know, dad's attitude is tough as a rhinoceros's hide. And it's comparing two unlike things, but now she's kind of showing a simile. Okay. Or it's going to say something like a flower blooming in the desert sunset. So you're going to see a lot of these descriptors, these similes, and I want you to be prepared for that and look for those kind of things. Like a breeze gathering strength. And if we think wind as it kind of gathers strength and gets stronger and stronger and stronger blowing. So they might be actually talking about a person getting stronger, but they're going to say like a breeze gathering strength. So there's a lot of these similes in this story as well. Okay. Now, the next thing I wanted to ask you guys, okay, they're going to talk a lot about obedience in this story. And here in America, we challenge people not to maybe just be super obedient all the time. We say, think outside the box. Even my kids are taught with Mrs. Tunn in their STEM class to have a gum brain, which means a stretchy brain. Always be thinking outside the box. And recently with the situation of COVID-19, we've asked a lot of people to think outside the box to create masks, right? Because there's not enough to go around, but the CDC says everybody who leaves the house should have a mask on. So we've had to really think outside the box and what materials we could use at home. All right. So we in America kind of do those kind of things. We say, think outside the box, don't be super obedient, but what is obedient? What does obedient mean? What does it mean to be obedient? We ask our dogs to be obedient, but what does it mean to be obedient?
Ariana says follow rules.
You're right. Follow the rules strictly, right? All right. So, in this story, they're going to ask that Shabanu is obedient. Okay. And I want to know, what are some of the pros, the positives of being obedient? If a person is obedient, what is a positive thing about being obedient? And there are some good things about being obedient. What do you think?
So Chase says you aren't punished for not doing what you're told.
That's true.
And Mark says you get respect.
Absolutely. I would agree. But there's also some cons of being obedient. What are those cons of being obedient? We don't always want to be obedient, and sometimes it's not good to be obedient. So, what is a con, a negative thing of being obedient?
Mark says people might not like you.
Okay.
Ariana says people might think you're a goody-goody.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
Bailey says you don't get into as much trouble, but you're too vulnerable.
Oh, vulnerable. I like it.
And Chase says you may not be able to do what you want to do.
That's true. That's true. When we think about being obedient, okay, and I'm just going to bring up things, obviously I'm a history teacher, so we're going to bring up things from the past. Okay, in the past, I'm going to talk specifically about women, mainly because this story is also about a young woman, Shabanu. In our past in America, if we go back to the 1800s, women were told to be obedient. We were told not to speak our own minds. Okay. We didn't get a say so in our government. Okay. We didn't get to vote. We didn't get to own property, things like that early on. Think early 1800s, that kind of thing. We really didn't get a say in much things. Not all women were obedient, though. We fought for women's rights. We wanted the right to vote. We wanted the right to speak our mind. We wanted the right to own property without being married, and we fought against that to change the way in which we live today. And we have all, if you're a girl, we have definitely benefited from that, or at least I think we have. We have benefited from some of the women in the past not being super obedient and really challenging the way that things should be done. But we have to understand that there's times where we need to be obedient, and there's times that we need to challenge the obedience. And I think even it's interesting that we're talking about this, even right now with the COVID-19 situation. The government asks us to be obedient right now, doing what? What are they asking us to be obedient about? They've given us a direction.
Ariana says, stay inside and wash your hands.
Exactly, right? Now, is this something we want to be obedient doing? I mean, what happens if we're not obedient following the directions from the CDC and the national government and Indiana state governor? What's going to happen if we're not obedient?
Bailey says you could die, and Jake says the virus will spread.
Okay, I was looking for the virus would spread. There's no guarantee we're going to die. Most people who even get this virus do survive. Let's be honest. Okay, I know that there's been a lot of deaths around the world. Most people, though, get the disease or the virus and then recover from it. Okay, so the thing is, it will spread further, though, if we are not obedient. So this is one point in time in history where we probably want to be super obedient and really follow the laws and the rules that are given, right? There's going to be times in the story that Shabanu's given rules, and sometimes she's going to follow them, and other times she's not. So we have to kind of read and determine, when is it good to be obedient and when is it not good to be obedient. All right. So there were some vocab words that you guys need to kind of be aware of this week. One of them was betrothal, meaning to get married. Okay. One of the things they're going to talk about with the betrothal is Pulan's dowry. Pulan is Shabanu's sister, right? And that's how we pronounce her name. If you didn't know, it's Pulan. And since you're listening to the story be read aloud in the coming days, because that's tomorrow's assignment, all right? But you're going to hear that name, Pulan, and it's Shabanu's sister, and they talk about a dowry. A dowry is all of the items that parents gather to give to the new husband. So for instance, let's just say Miss Williams was getting married. Okay. Her parents would get all these things together. It might be animals, it might be farm animals, it might be chickens or cows or pigs or camels, whatever they have. But it also might be jewelry, it might be money, it might be fabric, it might be any number of things that their family has, and they basically give this to the new husband as kind of a gift coming into the family for taking their daughter. Okay. The difference in this kind of scenario versus what we think of here in America is, here in America, we love our daughters. We take care of our daughters just like we do our sons. In many cultures in the Middle East, daughters are raised, but they are not given the same, let's say, status as a man in their communities. So daughters are basically kind of given away to their husband's family. That way the parents do not have to support those daughters. The new husband would take care of them. And I know that's a confusing concept, and we'll be talking a little bit more as we see that in the story as well. Okay. Next, they talk about a toba as well. The toba is basically this area where water gathers. Okay, when we think about a toba, it is an area where they can get water, they can give water for their animals to wash clothes or wash anything that they need to cook with, that kind of thing. And remember, our monsoons bring us those things. Other words that you might see, let's see. I'm trying to think what else was on that paper. Cistern. You might have seen a cistern. A cistern is basically this big kind of tank for storing liquids. And not like a pitcher. Like, I don't want you to think like a Brita pitcher in your sink or anything like that. Like, think big tank to hold some water, maybe outside. Those kind of things. So this story is going to be filled with vocabulary that's going to be new to you, that is definitely based in a different culture. So I want you to be prepared. And if you ever hear a word in the story that you don't know, look it up online by all means. I also encourage you guys to turn on your closed captioning when listening to the story. That way, if you hear a word and you're like, what did they say? At that point in time, you can kind of look at the screen, read it for yourself. I know that not all, that you guys don't have books for this story. I mean, we have books in the classroom, but I mean, obviously, but they're not going to be given out to you here because we're doing some e-learning here. But honestly, the ability to listen to the story is an excellent way to get the information across. Now, as we go forth in this story, there are going to be worksheets and different activities that you guys have to do that will come across in the Google Classroom, as you'll see. And there's going to be a project at the very end of this, okay? I'm going to talk more about the project when we get to the end, but at the end, I want you to be thinking of this, okay? You're going to have to choose out like 4 scenes from the book. So be thinking about that. You might want to take some notes on some different scenes as you go along. And this is for that project that's at the end, okay? Again, you don't want to have to re-listen to the story and be like, are you kidding me? To remember certain things. So you're going to be asked to kind of draw out or kind of create, for lack of a better word, 4 different scenes from the book. All right. So with that, I just want you to be thinking, I don't want you to start drawing. Do not start drawing because you're like, oh, I know what I'm going to have to do. You don't have the rubric yet. You don't actually know what to do, but I want to put that in your mind to be thinking about, hey, this scene really stands out. It's really vivid. I can picture it in my head, and jot those things down, okay, about those scenes. I'm going to pause. Are there any questions at this point in time? Understand this is going to happen. This project is going to happen the last week of school. So we're talking like May, 19th through 21st or something like that. So we've got over a month until we get there. But since we are only having 3 days of class, usually we read this book in about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. We'll read it in class, then I send you guys home and you read it at home, and we pound this book out in about 2 weeks. Since you have to listen to everything online, this is going to be stretched out over a very long period of time. And because of that, I really think that it would benefit you if you jotted down just a couple of notes for different scenes that are very memorable. So, do you guys have any questions?
So Chase wants to know what time period the book is again.
Oh, it was written about 20, I'll say 15 to 20 years ago. I don't have an exact date. But it's set at that time period. So early 2000s, let's say that, early 2000s. So think, I don't know, I'll make up a date, 2003. I'm going to throw it out there. But it was about...
And Devin really would like to know if we'll have a link to watch the movie.
There is no movie. No movie. They've never made a movie about it. So, There is a teacher who a few years ago must have had her class read it, and she recorded the book. So she read it aloud, and I listened to her, and honestly, she has a very appealing voice. I think more appealing than my voice. To be quite honest, when I brought the book home, I told my husband that he was going to have to read the book while I recorded him on YouTube if I couldn't find it, because I think he has a more appealing voice to listen to. Don't get me wrong, I love me. I just think when reading a book, it's, I hear other people. I hear Miss Williams typing, so there might be some questions.
Oh no, Chase is just being funny.
Oh. All right. So does anybody else have any other questions? Again, we're going to be reading this book. Each week, what I'm going to do is actually kind of bring up ideas about the book, making sure that you really understand the book and what we're talking about. This will help you create your project at the end. So you may want to share that with some of your classmates and things like that. Also in the future, like next week and the weeks following, when we meet each week and we talk about the books, the more that you participate, the better you're going to learn. Okay. Don't be afraid about asking silly questions, or if you don't really understand something. If you don't understand something, by all means, jot it down. Ask a question about it when we come back in to class next time. I mean, you can always shoot me a private email as well. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes it's nice to have the back and the forth. And you're probably not the only person who had a question about it. You'll be reading 3 to 4 chapters every week. It's 1 to 2 chapters a day. It's about 30 minutes that you'll listen to her read a story a day about, give or take. It might be one day might be 22 minutes and another day might be 31 minutes, but that's about an average. Any other questions? No. Ooh, well then. All right. I think then in that case, we're pretty good. We talked about the similes and the likes and the ases. We've talked about some of the main characters. Pulan is Shabanu's sister. There's obviously mommy and daddy. There are Pulan and Shabanu's auntie. They're part of the story. So yeah, that way you kind of get the idea of who's in this. It's about her family and coming to age. That means growing up. And this is something. Shabanu and Pulan grow up at a relatively young age. You have to understand that in their community, it is okay to be married at a very young age. Essentially, as soon as a girl starts menstruating or gets her period, then she is able to be married off. So we don't think of that as when we would get married typically, but in many countries in this part of the world, that is still a perfectly okay practice to partake in, marrying when you become a woman, for lack of better words. I know. Oh, I saw somebody's comment oh.
Yeah. Ariana.
Oh yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Most of you would not be all about being married within the next couple of years. So
not even Miss Williams.
I get it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I didn't get married till I was 27. So I was not all about being married at a young age. So I had some other things I wanted to.
Something, Chase, you need to remember that this takes place about 15, 20 years ago, and it's still something that's in practice today in that part of the world.
Mm-hmm. It's normal in this part of the world. Everything in this book is very normal in this part of the world still. This is perfectly acceptable. And these people would actually think we were weird for treating our students and our children the way we do. They would say things like, you're babying them. They need to grow up. They need to be more mature. We don't think about it that way. So it's a completely different culture. Now, I will say that it doesn't mean that everybody in Pakistan does this. Okay, that's not the truth either. There are people in Pakistan, women and men, who don't get married at a young age, who do go on to a higher education. But these families that do that are probably going to be more affluent, meaning you're very wealthy families. Does that kind of make sense? Your nomads, your lower income families would definitely still abide by the rules of marrying their children off at a younger age. Questions? All right, well, I think that is everything I have for this. Again, what did I ask you to do while you're reading, or I should say listening, because you're really listening to the book? What did I ask you guys to do? You're going to do what? I see.
Take notes.
Take notes. Yes. Okay.
Yay.
That's going to be important for your project, that unfortunately, instead of it just being like 2 weeks after we start reading, which would have been normally what we do, it's going to be out in May. And let's be honest, in 1 month's time, do you think you can forget some important parts of the story? Yeah, definitely. And you don't want to have to go back and re-listen to the story. So by all means, and I'm not saying you need to take 20 pages of notes. No, I really think just, a couple of notes here and there, maybe a couple major characters, maybe like kind of, like I said, 4 scenes, only 4 scenes that seem really important. FYI, all the scenes cannot be from the same chapter. So I don't want you to think you can, like, I'm done after chapter 4. Woo! No. You need to have, part of the rubric says that they need to kind of be spread out. So you need to have, like, think beginning, middle, end. I have to laugh because my daughter was doing that activity at a 1st grade level today. She was looking at like the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. Of course, hers was a book about rabbits. But that's kind of what we're looking at, is beginning, middle, and end. So please, please, please don't think that you're done after chapter 4. Not going to work like that. You have to talk about stuff in the beginning, you have to talk about stuff in the middle, and you have to talk stuff at the end. But I don't want to throw the notes on you as like hey, by the way, you should have done this. I want you to know that up front before we start reading, which starts tomorrow, unless you've already worked ahead, because I posted the assignment yesterday. Anything else? No?
Nope, I don't believe so.
All right. Well, then in that case, I am going to turn off my Screencastify just to stop that. And then I'm going to kind of see how you guys have been doing. And I'd love to hear from you. But I do need to get this Screencastify to stop first. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. I'm telling you, this Screencastify just... And if you don't have any interest in talking or anything like that, you can exit the meeting. Have a great day. Enjoy. Some of us would love to talk to somebody other than our family. So, and other people are like, they say I'm tired.
Well, that's because Chase said he stayed up all night for the first time, which is not a good thing to do.
All night? All night. It's been so long since I've stayed up all night.
Hi, Devin.